federal stimulus money and how it impacts, New York City, but also Manhattan in particular. So I really appreciate everyone. I hope that we can make sure that that money gets spent in the communities for which it is proposed. So with that, I turn it over to Rosie Mendez. Thank you very much, Rosie.
Thank you, Madam Borough President. We're going to start with roll call. I will call your community board, and if you can please say your name so it could be captured on the record. Community Board 1.
Good morning. This is Tammy Meltzer from Community Board 1. Thank you so much.
Community Board 2. Community Board 3. Community Board 4. Community Board 5. Oh, Board 5 is going to get on at 8:40. So, Community Board 6.
They'll come. Don't worry, tech team. They'll show up. Go ahead.
Community Board 7.
Present.
Thank you. Stephen, can you please say your name for the record?
Oh, sorry. Stephen Brown, CB Chair.
Thank you. CB 8.
Russell Squire, Chair.
9.
Barry Weinberg, Chair.
10. Cecily said she was going to be a few minutes late. CB 11.
Xavier Santiago, Vice Chair, Community Board 11.
CB 12. Okay. We have 6 chairs present and the borough president, so we actually have quorum. First, I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt the agenda for today for March 18th.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 None against? Anyone abstaining? The ayes have it. And a motion to adopt the February 18th, 2021 Borough Board meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Anyone abstaining? Okay, the ayes have it. Senator Schumer, if you're ready, we can turn over the floor to you.
I don't know if he's here. I think it says tech team still, Rosie.
Yeah.
Kyle is here, so we can see if there are any other community board chairs who've shown up. I think
So-
Board 6 is here, is what I'm trying to say. Did you call Board 6 before?
Yes, I did. Okay.
Kyle is here.
Okay, CB, let's just go through it while we're waiting. CB2, CB3, CB10, and 12. Okay, those are the missing boards. So should we start with,
Yeah, start doing the reports until the.
Yeah.
okay. So it is March, so it would be CB3, but there's no one here from CB3 right now. We're gonna go. Why don't we just start with CB1, Tammy?
Apologies. I didn't know I was going to go first this morning. Give me 1 second then to get myself ready. I pull my notes up usually a board in advance. Hang on a sec.
Thank you, Tammy.
Okay, I have actually lots of notes for Community Board 1. So good morning and thank you so much. Very pleased to be here. Community Board 1 continues to be quite busy this month. I want to thank the borough president for her letter regarding 240 Greenwich, which is 101 Barclay. We want to start with that because every amount of public space that we have, whether it's POPs, parks, or whatever, is valued and urgent to keep, especially looking forward as we recover from the pandemic. So thank you very much for that. We wanted to note that the Trust for Governor's Island has passed the City Department of City Planning perspective and moves on to City Council. So for those other community board members and members of the public who have sent their thoughts to us and expressed the time to advocate for your own City Council people is basically now. We know that we sent a letter as a follow-up with 23 items asking to be addressed. Of the 23, 2 were addressed, 9 were partially commented, and the rest still stand outstanding. Our biggest concerns are the density, bulk, and height of the new development plans, and that is extraordinarily concerning to us. And we want to thank the borough president for supporting the work for Governor's Island as spoken by the community board and a variety of local residents. We've been also looking and having dialogues about 250 Water Street, which is a large development being planned in the historic district. I say large development because it has come before landmarks and we've just had a second presentation. It's gone from 470 to 345 feet in height, but the ceiling limit's 120. So we certainly hope that further work will be done by that because CB1 has rejected it numerous times. Lower Manhattan coastal resiliency is a large topic that's being pushed ahead. We are excited about the opportunities to take a careful look at the 5-eye seaport plans and how they may differ from what was proposed a while ago for Seaport City, and understand what kind of options are available all over to do something that's truly comprehensive and in the public benefit forever. Because once you put whatever you put there will be the new landscape for Manhattan. The Battery Wharf is also exciting to see that that has started to come. There are challenges with the proposal that we have from the Battery Park City Authority because we've heard from the Battery Conservancy, there are aspects of the plan that they are not happy with, but they don't seem to have a voice or vote in the conversation, and the community as well. And then I want to say we've had a lot of conversation back and forth about CAPA, right? And DOT published a CAPA agenda for year 2021, but there's been no meetings, no information, nothing else posted. And we couldn't find out even how to get notified. And our focus in transportation really is to make it safer for everybody in very specifically those who are challenged with mobility issues, simply because if you're going to make a city ruling that's going to affect the entire city, and it's about crosswalks and curb cuts and other things, that it really should come along with public hearings. So you'll see a letter coming to the borough president asking for some help on that.
I could do it.
Thank you very much. With that, we also want to say, sadly, we did have an incident, murder at the Seaport area in one of the buildings that EDC owns. We had hoped for many, many decades that it could be saved through funding, but we were notified that it is definitely getting demolished. It is a sad grouping of the situation that we currently are in the city, with the rise of homelessness, people looking for places to stay. And the woman who was murdered was homeless by 2 other homeless people who were encamped in an abandoned building downtown. It's sad for so many reasons. And one of the things that we noticed is the people who were part of this were also well known for having an encampment under the sidewalk sheds. So I'm going to ask that for future meetings, we take a look if maybe we can make this a sidewalk shed reform a topic for borough board. I don't think there's any community board that has not suffered with sidewalk sheds that have been up forever. And we do want people to find shelter, but ideally in a place where they can get help versus underneath a sidewalk shed. So that would be something that we would look forward to. And on a bright side, for CB1, we've got some fabulous art displays downtown. Come visit.
Thank you, Tammy. I just want to mention one thing, Rosie Mendez, which is that 4 out of the 5 borough presidents on Governor's Island either voted no or abstained. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, I really hope that the people who care about the future of Governor's Island, which we all should, go to speak to city council and speak to their city council members, because there are opportunities for change. I will say the trust has been willing to do some of them. There's a lot more work to be done. And again, like everything else that goes through ULURP, if you don't say something now, you have no opportunity to say something later when a giant tower gets put up. Thank you very much, Madam Borough President.
Just some housekeeping. We've been joined by Carter Booth from CB2. We've been joined by Linda Jones from CB3 and Greg Slutskin from CB5.
And Mark Kern from CB4.
There you go. Thank you, Lowell.
Thanks, Rosie.
And we've been joined by some council members. Trying to pull up their names, but as I understand.
Councilmember Kayla.
Hello, you've been
Councilmember-
joined by Chuck Schumer of Senate District 1.
Yes. Senator Schumer, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. Your timing is perfect. We just finished community board number 1, and Tammy Melcher gave us a whole downtown discussion of what's going on. So now we look forward to you, and we so appreciate you making the time this morning. You've got council members, many community board chairs and members, and Manhattan at its fullest. So all yours, sir. And thank you for joining us. It
Well,
means a
thank you,
lot.
Gail, and thank you for the great job you've been doing and have done as Manhattan Borough President. Gail fights for every part of Manhattan all the time. And I think Manhattanites and all of us as New Yorkers are lucky to have her there. And I want to thank both our council members and our board members for the service they put in to our wonderful and great city, which I have no doubt will bounce back bigger and better than ever. I've lived through all these crises. All the time the naysayers say, oh, New York's finished, and all the time we come back bigger and better than ever, but only if we work at it. And I know all of you are working at it, and I am working at it. So I thank you for doing what you're doing. I see a lot of people I know on this call, some I don't know on this call, but it's great of all of you to take the time. What I want to do is just give you a fairly comprehensive report on the bill we just passed. There are some things that are known, some that are not, some details not. But it was probably the most progressive piece of legislation passed in decades. It's historic. It's going to provide, as you know, $1.9 trillion of real relief in New Yorkers. New York will get over $100 billion for workers, family, healthcare, small businesses, hard-hit industries like restaurants, and the city government. I'm happy to let you know, city councilmen, and I'll get to this, since city council members, I did not let the state take all the money and let them drip down to you what they wanted, despite some negatives from the second floor in Albany. I said, no, we're going to give you all the money you need, state government, Governor Cuomo, but we're also going to give the cities and localities the money they need directly. So let me go over what's in the bill, but overall, it's the contrast between us and the Republicans is amazing. So the last big reconciliation bill the Republicans did was tax cuts for the wealthy and the big corporations. Almost all of it benefited the top 1% and top 10%. Our bill is the opposite. We benefit the poor. The poorer you are, the better you do in this bill. And we help the middle class very strongly as well. So the center, the Tax Policy Center, which is a progressive tax group that follows this stuff, the bottom 20% in America will see a 20% increase in their income. It's probably even higher in New York. And the top 1% will see a 0% increase in their income. That's how it ought to be. And that's when Democrats take over House, Senate, presidency, it makes a difference. So let me go over some details. State and local aid. New York City will receive $5.6 billion, okay? Their budget deficit, the city council members probably know it better than me, is less than that. So you should actually have a little bit of excess there. It's also very, very flexible. It can be used, obviously, for lost revenues. It can be used to keep workers on the payroll, but it can also be used for investments in travel, in hospitality, in water, in sewer. There's separate money for broadband where you can make sure that all these poor kids who can't go to school because they don't have a hotspot or broadband can get some help. I met a woman in Brooklyn. She was a hospital worker, and she saved and saved because her son was starting first grade. He could buy a computer, and she bought him a computer, and she was so proud. And over July and August, she taught him to use it, but she lost her job, and she couldn't pay the fee, the monthly fee to be connected to the internet. And the kid started school without it. And it just broke my heart to hear that story. It's a little story, but there are so many of them. On unemployment insurance, let me see here. I want to make sure, let's see. Yeah. So I want to make sure I get to everything. Yeah. So on unemployment insurance, we've extended it through September. It's an additional $300 a week on top of state and federal existing unemployment benefits, and it affects everybody. I worked with the Freelancers Union. Your former council member, Espinal, is in charge of them, and they're included. Gig workers are included. Self-employed people are included. All kinds of non-traditional unemployment. There's also a $10,200 tax exclusion for unemployment compensation, so you don't get taxed. You just get taxed on it. So now you don't for people whose income is below 150,000. The direct payment checks, they're starting to arrive, and people are getting them. As you know, we promised in December $2,000. The Republicans said zero, so we had they were in charge then. So we had a compromise at 600. We've gotten the additional 1,400. And so everyone, if you're a family of 4, you should get a $5,600 check if your income is below 150,000. Single person gets a $1,400 check, income below 75,000. Here's maybe the most important thing in the bill. We basically doubled the child tax credit, the earned income tax credit, and the child and dependent care tax credits. Half the children in poverty in America will be taken out of poverty. This is breathtaking. A poor child who is in poverty, who's born no fault of his or her own, doesn't get fed properly, clothed properly, proper health care, proper housing, proper education. And then when they're 18, they're just years behind. This will change that. So it's an investment. It's an investment in human resources. And it's estimated, as I said, that half of all children will be taken out of poverty. It particularly affects children of color, Black, brown, Asian, Native American. And you get the child tax credit goes from $2,000 to $3,000 per child for ages 6 to 17. It goes from $2,000 to $3,600 for children below 6. 66 million kids are going to get this. It also strengthens EITC for childless workers. There are 17 million low-income adults. It will get them money. These are all refundable. And the tax credit, they get a tax benefit of up to $4,000 a child to cover the cost of childcare. That's a credit. So it's sort of $4,000 of childcare is free if you're paying taxes, and it's refundable. So if you're not paying taxes, the federal government pays for the childcare. This is an incredible leap. And our goal, and we'll need your help and everyone's help across the country, is when the year is up. This starts in July. That takes a while to implement. It'll go for a whole year. But when it's time's up, we want to make it permanent, and we'll change America. So we'll need your help in pushing for that. Paid and family sick leave. It's an extension of the paid sick leave and the family medical leave tax credits for family. It goes to the end of September of 2021. Food and nutrition assistance. We got a 15% benefit in SNAP, which we've been seeking for a long time. $490 million increasing WIC. and eligibility meals for young adults at homeless shelters. They can now go up to 25 years old rather than 18 years old. So it feeds more people at the homeless shelters. And really important, pandemic electronic benefit transfer. The kids who were getting breakfast and lunches in schools when they weren't in school weren't getting them. So I set up a program, they could be delivered food to their doors. That's been extended as well. Housing, big issue. $21 million in rental assistance. New York State gets $2.5 billion. I'm working with the Housing Coalition, Sia Weaver. I don't know how many of you work with her on housing, and Josh
we know.
Weston.
We know.
Yep, to make sure that the regulations that the feds put in place make sure the money, the rental assistance goes to the people who need it to pay the rent, not to landlords, big landlords, or anyone else. We didn't want to just give the money to the state again because we wouldn't know what would happen to it. And that New York State gets $2.5 billion. High need comes first. So parts of Manhattan will be at the top of the list. This is a lot of relief and it's good. There's also, this is very important here, Gail, in Manhattan. There's $5 billion to help eradicate homelessness, and the money is flexible and it goes to many solutions, including purchasing property like hotels and motels to make them into non-congregate shelters, which is,
That's phenomenal, Senator.
I know you've been asking for that. Well, there's $5 billion, again, on a need basis. There's also $5 billion in emergency housing vouchers, which help transition high need, homeless, and at-risk families. There's $9 billion for mortgage, not so much in Manhattan, but utility assistance. What good is it if you pay the rent if you don't have electricity or water or anything like that? So there's money for that. As I said, there's $7 billion for broadband. Here are two things you may not know that's in the bill. Spread the word. We say that those incarcerated can get full Pell Grants. Young men and young women who are in prison, often just for a small amount of marijuana in their pocket, they want to make a better life for themselves, but they don't have any money, so they can't enroll in any courses. This allows them, the Pell Grant pays for college courses, technical courses, community college courses. And a second thing, very important, Representative Ocasio-Cortez called me up when Corona was the epicenter and said, we need help with funerals. And I knew what she meant, because one of the saddest things, you see children and grandchildren pushing their face up against the glass, thick glass in the hospital, waving goodbye to their grandmas and grandpas and moms and dads. They can't hug them, they can't kiss them, they can't touch them. And that's awful. And then they can't give them a burial because they're out of money. So the federal government will provide, I got this, so Ocasio-Cortez called me. Cortez Masto is a senator from Nevada. Ocasio-Cortez called me, said, we got to do something. I got it in the law. There's now $7,000 for funeral and burial expenses if you've lost your job or don't have money due to COVID, and you can get it retroactively. We will have a hotline set up in a couple of weeks that people can call. They will need documentation that the person died of COVID, but we're working with the state to get that done, and the medical examiners to get that done, okay? But that's a big thing too, as well as the prisoner thing, which is not known. Restaurants, we got $28 billion for restaurants. It's a 6-month grant, very flexible to keep them going till September. A lot of Manhattan restaurants had rallied together. I visited a few, and this money is very flexible. It can pay their employees. Restaurant owners want to pay their employees so they don't leave, because a restaurant's sort of a small business, an organic small business. And I have a great deal. My dad had a little exterminating business and struggled his whole life, so I know how small business people struggle. He would pace the floor Sunday nights at 2 a.m. My brother and sister and I would hear him, sister and I. And so now they're getting some real help, the restaurants. And as you know, we got the arts venues, Broadway, but also the small arts venues will get the same kind of help. 6 months, it's a grant, and it's very flexible, and it will keep them open till, God willing, COVID is done. Vaccine and testing. The federal government is going to greatly augment the state and local efforts with many more vaccines and many sites. And the people, communities of color come first. We're using community health centers as a way to distribute this. If you have community health centers in your districts or in your borough,
We have
you should give
loads,
us-
we have loads of them. We love them. And they're federally qualified. They're fabulous. Thank you.
Yes, and they will get vaccines. They will get some federal personnel help to give them out. It's already working in Medgar Evers College in Brooklyn, not far from my house. My daughter got it because she was entitled to it, and she waited only 25 minutes. Okay, and there's many fewer cancellations and things like that. It's estimated that by May 1st, there'll be enough vaccines to cover every New Yorker. And by July 1st, everyone who wants a vaccine will have it, and we'll be back pretty much to normal. The Biden administration is doing so much a better job than the incompetent Trump administration. We put all the money in there that's needed, and the vaccines are free. Free. No one should charge you a copayment or a deductible. So that's very, very important. We've lowered healthcare premiums for millions of Americans who buy insurance through Marketplace. We've provided incentives. This doesn't affect New York, but there are 19 states that refused to expand Medicaid after ACA. They now have a big incentive to do it. Native Americans have gotten more money than they ever have. They're joyous. They're now on the map. So that plus the confirmation of Deb Haaland, the first Native American to be in the cabinet, means that this neglected group will now get real attention and dollars. We got $20 billion as well as $3 billion for the Indian Health Service. There's more money for maternity care, maternal, infant, and early childhood programs, more money for Title X, lots of good stuff there. This doesn't affect Manhattan. I don't think they have one, but we put some real money into African-American farming. It'll help us in lots of places, Georgia and other places. These people are neglected, and slavery still hangs over them, and tenant farming still hangs over them, black farmers. They're going to get some real help for the first time. And finally, education. Well, I got two more things. Education. There's $9 billion for New York K through 12 schools. It goes right to the schools. Your school district should be getting very good dollars to help them with COVID and all the expenses so they can open quickly. The goal is to have by the end of the year every school open, and there's money for summer school to make up for all the people who lost time learning. And your school districts will get informed of this. I made sure the formula is a Title I formula, so that the money goes to the neediest districts first. Finally, I mentioned there is money for LIHEAP and water. I mentioned that childcare. There's more money for childcare, $40 billion nationally, $1.8 billion for New York. So this bill, as I said, now I've documented it to you, is probably the most comprehensive progressive piece of legislation in decades, covering just about everybody in every way. Oh, small business, the PPP is extended to a second round if you're not a restaurant or an arts venue or anything like that. There's money there. And we did get money for our museums. I know how important they are to attract tourism, and they employ tens of thousands of working poor. They got some help. The hospitals got help last time. So they're doing okay. So this is a huge package, and we got the job done. We've also finished putting in Biden's cabinet. As of the next week, it'll all be put in, and we've gotten the people to do it, and other priorities just as we move forward. Climate change, the Build Back Better is a huge climate/infrastructure/ help communities of color bill. We're going to try to move that. S1 is vital to us. Democracy and all the despicable things and racist things the Republican legislatures are doing to stop voting. We have a moral imperative to stop those, as well as making sure we deal with income and racial inequality with things like changing the tax laws to make it more progressive, making sure the Justice in Policing Act, which would deal with racism in the police departments against people of color. These are our agenda once we get past all of this. So that's my report, Gail. It's 9 o'clock. I promised I'd end by then. If you have questions, comments, you need to help, we need groups to help get the money. You can
Yes.
call my office. I have a great staff. You can call Gail's office. She has a great staff. Getting these dollars now into the hands of the people to whom it's intended is our next job. And we look forward to working with you in partnership to get that done.
Thank you very much, Senator. We have a huge turnout, 108 people, thanks to you on this borough board. And second, if your wife was in charge of spending it for the whole state and the city, I would feel better. You know how strongly I feel about her.
Yes,
And then,
thank you.
Most definitely. And then third, just so you know, Manhattan, we are going to spend a great deal of time making sure that it does get spent, because having been for Dinkins in the federal office in Washington, I do understand the importance of making sure that it does right on our end. So every Tuesday we meet at 3 o'clock. We have been doing it on vaccines. Now we're going to pivot over to this topic. But
Great.
your introduction is more appreciated than I can ever express in words. So I want to thank you. So you should know that every member of the city council from Manhattan is on, and every single
Wow.
chair of our community boards are all here for your wonderful presentation.
Well, let me just conclude by thanking all of you, the council members, the board members, and all the staff for your dedication to Manhattan and to making our city, state, and country a better, fairer place. So on to more victories. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Senator. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm sorry he couldn't take questions. I didn't know how that was going to work, but what we can do is either now, depending on the time, or ongoing, when he listed all those and we have a year to spend it, I must admit, I get nervous having, like I said, spent some time on this topic in the Dinkins administration, making sure that it does get spent as we wish. So Rosie, go ahead, but I don't know if you want to have a few minutes about how to follow up with all of this. It's up to you.
Well, at 10, Rebecca is going to present
Right.
on, she's from the Director of Federal Affairs for Mayor de Blasio, and she's on another call now. So I don't know. We have a lot of council members who've joined us.
Right.
So I don't know, Gail, should we pivot to having some council member
Why don't we go to
reports?
the council members, because I appreciate your showing up. And I guess I would appreciate also, this is a lot of money to spend in a year. And in talking to some members of Congress, I won't say which ones, despite this fabulous listing of what's available, they are concerned about how it gets spent. And so I would love to hear, maybe there's work that you're doing or that we should be doing together. I'm open, but I do know, you know, how it comes down is as important as getting it allocated in the first place. So I think Councilmember Kalos, Councilmember Ayala were here first, right, Rosie?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Kalos, do you want to go ahead?
Thank you. I will
Whatever you
make
want,
this
and then- yeah.
incredibly quick. I want to thank the borough president. It was good to have Senator Schumer on. I never interned for Gail Brewer, which I know is a rite of passage for most people in politics, but I did intern for Chuck Schumer. So thanking him for all his great work. And I want to thank both of them. They joined me for our State of the District. We do it every year, and we had over a dozen folks from the community tell their stories, and welcome folks to watch it at benkalos.com/State of the District/2021. This came up at a borough board when I first got elected in like 2014 about all the affordable housing that was out there that no one had access to. We wrote local law 64 with Gail Brewer, passed it into law, and now we're starting to see affordable housing starting to come back into the market where they're getting re-rented. So we just had 11 units come up in a luxury building in the district. We joined the borough president to cut the ribbon on another 35 in a passive house building. And so we're actually starting to see affordable housing on the Upper East Side where we should be building it along with everywhere else. So that is incredibly important. With so many people out of work, we need to make sure that jobs are actually available for people based on what they know, not who they know. So we have legislation that would require the city to post every single job before they hire for it. In the district, we've been dealing with the blood center, which the borough president opposes, that I also oppose, and we're fighting it because it would block out the light and air in the park across the street from 1 o'clock on most of the year. There's also some stuff that DCP put out about the fact that some neighborhoods aren't building enough housing to meet up with what's being lost, but it failed to mention that they've been tearing down affordable housing to build that market rate housing. Those are some of the highlights. I want to thank Tammy for her report and mentioning the sidewalk sheds. I've got the legislation to take them down. Would love to get it down as soon as possible. And today we're introducing legislation to ban terminators. We should not have robot dogs with weapons on them. There's no reason to weaponize a robot. And I don't know if other folks are as concerned about the digi-dogs running around our city as others are, but it seems like an awful waste of money. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Ayala. She's still on? Okay, Councilmember Rosenthal.
She was here.
Hi, I
Yep.
didn't expect to be called on so quickly. So Gail, thank you for bringing in Senator Schumer. That was the most comprehensive explanation of what just happened and what the federal government passed. And I heard about things that I had not known about before. So I really appreciate that. And it's a better package than I think we all could have imagined. And the thought of making it permanent, I think we should all, obviously lean in about that. That would be really exciting. Look, March is budget month. And for me, that is just very important. We have oversight hearings on all the big agencies. Gail's been present or has had staff present at a few of them, and I've really appreciated that. Sorry. I'm double zooming for a second. So I think most importantly, had a good hearing with Commissioner Shea, where we talked not just about his budget, but about the police accountability plan, which I think is was not put together in the way that was promised, which would be with community input. I've heard from so many community groups saying that they were not, really consulted in any meaningful way. That's a huge problem. My particular area that I'm looking at, of course, is domestic violence. And none of the groups that I work with, had input in any meaningful way at all. The plan basically calls for the first step to be work with community groups. And I just find that disingenuous, very disappointing. So that's probably the most important hearing that's gone by. Although yesterday's on general welfare was also just incredibly sad and, hard. So hopefully all this federal money will come in, the city will spend it responsibly. Gail, I appreciate your mentioning that at the beginning. I too will be very interested in tracking that. And it'll address some of the real hardships that people who need and deserve the safety net have endured over the last year. So with that, I pass it over to the next council member, but thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Powers and Councilmember Rodriguez.
My turn now?
Yes, Idanis, go for it.
So, thank you. Thank you, Rosie, and thank you, Gail, for bringing our majority leader now at the Senate to give the great presentation. I know that all of us agree that we have a lot of work to do to be sure that the city use all those resources. I feel that for me, it is a particular interest to continue working against with the New York City congressional delegation, in my case with Congressman Espaillat, and all of us to be sure that the money get to our small business. I think that we all know that bank is the one that processes the application, and banks are not necessarily have never given a priority to the real map and pop, but it's more to, those that they being their client longer. And I think that we need to continue working with SBS. We need to continue working with all of us so that that the money really get to be allocated to the small businesses who are struggling. And the second piece is on transportation. I think that that's one area where now that the money is coming to the MTA, we need to be sure that the MTA works to improve the safety and to continue making transportation affordable. In my own bills, one that I'm working right now is to pass a bill that will create for the first time the Mayor's Office of Sport and Recreation. It is almost done. We are hoping to get that bill passed in the first state meeting in April. And the idea is that we will have a director of that office that will be working with advisory board members, with members in advisory board to put a strategies and initiative on how to make competitive sport programs accessible and affordable to all children and youth, but especially to children of underserved communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivana.
Is Councilmember Powers or Levine still on? Okay. So we'll move back to chair reports. And we changed things up because a few chairs were coming in late. So Carter Booth, instead of going last today, you're now going to go next. And this is Carter's last Manhattan Borough Board meeting because there are elections tonight for chair and he cannot run again. So thank you, Carter, for your service.
Thanks, Rosie. Carter Booth from Community Board 2. Like you said, it's my last meeting. And Rosie, thank you for appointing me to Community Board 2 in 2006. And also to Gail for reappointing me the many years. It's been great working with everybody. Janine Kiley, who many of you know is running uncontested in our election, is tonight at our full board meeting. I was having a little technical difficulty jumping on there in the beginning, but I don't know if anybody's mentioned it, but this is the 1-year anniversary of meeting via Zoom, I think for Borough Board, but certainly for all the community boards. So it's been a long year. So I'll start off, any of my reports wouldn't be complete without a mention of the March 30th Soho NoHo, our third information session, which is sponsored by the Department of City Planning, Councilmember Chin, and of course, Borough President Brewer. We were hoping that we could get some information in advance of that meeting on the JLWQA mechanism that DCP said would be addressed on the 30th. And Gail, we're appealing to you as the Envision co-sponsor to maybe get them to release information on that a few days before the meeting so that we can ask better questions and really understand that. That's obviously a pretty complicated topic. So that would really be helpful. I've been asked by a few of the other advisory group members to make that request. Second, we had heard an interesting presentation this month from the Meatpacking Bid on enhanced open streets and enhanced open restaurants. They have a plan there, and it's a multi-street closure in a small area. And I'm not sure if it's one of the first in Manhattan, but we're very excited about it in that it's an area that's very close together with a number of different closed streets. So if anybody's interested in that, you can take a look at the link, which is on our website. We also had a panel on how Chinatown residents and businesses have been particularly affected by COVID-19 pandemic, even before pause started. And as many of you know, there are a lot of topics with Asian Americans have been in the news recently. And we had started this off just before this had moved into the international, in the national press with a lot of the incidents, but it was really, I guess, interesting to hear some of the unique issues that they had. So, for example, some of the issues surrounding grant money from the for small businesses was determined by zip code, and a good part of Chinatown shares a zip code with Tribeca, and therefore they were excluded from a lot of the grant programs. That was interesting to hear that, you have exactly the types of businesses that those grants are trying to target were excluded. We heard issues regarding equitable distribution of vaccines within the community. There's a lack of translation services and other issues that are similar to that. And it's a lot of surprise to that, given that Chinatown is one of the oldest Chinatowns in the country. And, yet this persists and continuing and being an issue. We heard about the anti-Asian violence that's been occurring, and we heard personal accounts of that. And again, this was before this really moved into the national news, and it was really incredibly disturbing. And as someone who grew up in Taiwan for a number of years while I was a kid, it's really difficult to hear that this continues. I mean, even into current weeks. Last night, we discussed the School Construction Authority's capital plan and the extension of the Bleecker Street option, which leaves about, I guess the value of that's around 65 million, which is benefits in New York City taxpayers. But if that is allowed to expire on December 31st, we would miss out on that opportunity. We're hoping the date can be extended to 2025. And we're also hoping that the downtown Bleecker Street School Task Force can be reconvened, and that includes all of our local officials, including the Borough President's office. We are convening our first Gansevoort Arts Panel, which is great to have that moving. It was delayed by COVID, but we have a really cool community benefit space at 46 Gansevoort Street that was part of it'll be a permanent free rehearsal space for community groups. It was a result of negotiation and an amendment of a restrictive declaration with Aurora Capital. Speaker Johnson was really played a big role in allowing that to happen. I had a chance to speak with someone named Aldrin at the Fund for the City of New York. I think that maybe a few of you are familiar with. And I guess the Fellows Program is going to be starting up in April, which is exciting for us to hear. I was trying to find out more information on that. So I think all the chairs should look forward to that and getting some ideas for him so that we can all take advantage of the Fellows Program. As many of you know, the 4 citywide zoning text amendments are coming down the pike. One of the ones that we're particularly interested in hearing about is the changes in the zoning as far as they relate to open restaurants program, but we don't have any information. And I think that that's something that we all might want to participate in that conversation, but I'm hoping we have an opportunity to do that in a meaningful fashion. And last but not least, wanted to just mention what I had mentioned last month, and this is something I'm sure Janine will continue bringing up with you, but we need to start the discussion about hybrid meetings and transitioning to hybrid meetings. It's something that the public expects, and I think that that's something that we all have to really acknowledge and work towards, even though the state open meetings laws doesn't really take that into account at this point. But the amount of participation has been really significant at our meetings and on certain topics. So I hope that's something everybody can keep in the back of their mind as we go forward. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Carter. I just want to say a couple of things. We're very aware of open meetings, and we're pushing to have it be what you suggested, opportunities for both. We have to figure out also the tech, so it really works well for everybody. Some of the schools are actually doing it, not many, but some of them have actually figured it out how to do it, so you can teach in class, in the home. Everything's working. So the question is, can we do the same for the community boards? And we have to. And I also want to say we will definitely start the task force again on the school. I didn't realize that had not happened. So thank you very much. And we'll get to the joint mechanism one way or the other for Soho NoHo joint living. Thank you.
Thank you. Community Board 3, Linda Jones.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to participate. I just got subbed in this morning about half an hour before this meeting, so I don't feel comfortable trying to make a report on what Community Board 3 is up to, since one was not given to me. So thanks anyway, and I'm very interested to hear what everyone else has to say. And I loved I loved hearing from Mr. Schumer. That was wonderful.
Thank you, Linda.
Lowell Kern, Community Board 4.
Good morning. I'm going to keep this really short. The biggest issue we're dealing with right now is the Empire Station Development Plan that the state is trying to force down the throats of CB4 and CB5. This isn't a transportation plan, even though they're billing it as a Penn Station plan. It's a development plan for Midtown Manhattan to put super talls that will dwarf the Empire State Building. But I'm going to leave it to my colleagues at CB5 to really take this thing apart today, because we have one site that the ESD is looking at and the rest of it is within CB5. So I'll let them go off on this much longer than I will. We also had a report, this one's better. We had a report from the Port Authority about the new Port Authority bus terminal development, and it looks really good right now. In addition to getting buses off the street, not only the buses, the New Jersey Transit and Greyhound and the stuff that's inside the terminal, there will be a separate terminal for the buses that are now all over the streets dropping off. And it looks pretty promising. So we're excited about that. I want to call out our ACES committee, that's Arts, Cultural Affairs, Education Committee. And one of our members, Leslie Murphy, is listening to the call this morning. We held a forum on the DOE's new admissions policy that was very well attended. There was a lot of confusion about the lottery. It also came out at this meeting that the DOE is looking to eliminate AP classes, which would be a disaster. As the father of two kids who took a lot of AP classes and thus went into college with college credits, and one of them was able to graduate early because of that, saving his father a lot of money. You know, that would be a disaster. And then what was the last thing I wanted to mention? I think that's it. I'm going to stop there, Rosie. Thanks.
Anything on the Hudson River Park? Well, I don't know.
Well, the governor announced a lot of development in our district, including for Hudson River Park. There is the connector that has been announced between the northern end of the park and Riverside South. So the bike lane and the walking path will be connected between Riverside South and Hudson River Park, where right now you have to go under the part of the West Side Highway where the ramp is coming down to 57th Street. So that's going to get cleaned up. The Intrepid lease is now up for renewal, and the board has taken a position that the lease that the trust negotiated is not sufficient. I can't comment on that because I am a trust board member, thanks to you, Gail. But I can say that the board voted a letter that said the lease is inadequate because the Intrepid is paying $1 in rent. And then Pier 76, we are still waiting for more concrete plans from the state about dismantling what is now the old tow pound. We did succeed there, but we're waiting on plans to see how they're going to dismantle that and make that space available this summer for use by the community. It would just be a concrete slab like some of the old piers in the village used to be. But we want to hear more from the state before there's anything concrete we can say about that.
Thank you very much. Community Board 5, Greg Slutskin.
Thanks, Rosie, and good morning, everybody. Vicky wasn't able to attend this morning, and for those of you who don't know me, my name is Craig Slutskin. I'm the secretary of CB5. So I'll try to be brief. A few quick things, and then I'll get into the Empire State Complex issue that Lowell was alluding to. So first, we passed a resolution supporting council intros 960 and 980 regarding air pollution monitoring. We believe that this is going to increase transparency to require air quality data for the public's information, and have a really positive effect of requiring the various administrative agencies to develop and implement remediation plans to restore air quality where it's needed. We also passed a resolution approving the construction of a connecting bridge between the 10th floor of 1270 Avenue of the Americas and the new roof garden that's going to be on top of Radio City Music Hall. It's beautiful, it's simple, unobtrusive. It's a walkway that's going to incorporate historic materials from Rock Center. The bridge and a green accessible roof were originally designed as part of the Rock Center complex years ago. So we're happy to have been able to approve the construction. Finally, the big ticket item on this month's agenda was the Empire Station complex draft and our response. And as Lowell said, this is a development plan. It's redeveloping 9 blocks around Penn Station as part of a relocation of MSG. It's 10 new buildings. It's doubling current density by adding something like 20 million square feet. And we passed a resolution that said that this is unacceptable, the way it's construed. I've been working closely with CB4 on the advocacy against this proposal. We had a number of issues with it. Penn Station upgrades are not in the scope of work. We don't know the cost, the funding, the revenue structure. We don't know over what period of time. It's not conditional on any public realm, transit, or infrastructure improvements. There's been very little community outreach. For example, K-Town, which is right over there, has not been spoken to about this. It's probably a net loss of open spaces, a loss of shadows or increase of shadows, potentially 18 years of construction, potentially, with noise, and nobody's talked about how people around there are going to have to live with the noise or how that could be remediated. There's been very little transparency. We feel the proposal substantially affects the whole borough. And actually, Rosie, we'd appreciate it if you can distribute our final resolution to, when you get it, to all of the board chairs. I'd read it now, but I think it's like 13 or 14 pages. We do support a Penn Station renovation, but only the right way. And we think there's going to be a lot of work ahead of us for both CB4, CB5, and the whole borough to get it there. But as the proposal now, as it stands, we find it unacceptable. And speaking for Lowell, I think CB4 took this very similar, is taking a very similar approach.
Thank you very much. Kyle Athade from Community Board 6.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting the senator today. That was really great to hear. So just some updates from Community Board 6. Big thing on Tuesday, March 30th, in partnership with Community Boards 1, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. We're putting together a workshop session, panelist discussion on pricing out mom and pop, how the changing housing market has affected small businesses. The borough president will be on this panelist as well, and we have a really great lineup of speakers, which includes academics, small business owners. So I would definitely encourage everybody to attend that. We'll send out the flyers so that everybody can have that registration link. We also sent a letter to DDC about the traffic enforcement agents at the ESCR area along the river on the 20th Street Avenue C intersection, as well as the 23rd Street, where we haven't really seen the TAEAs that were supposed to be assigned be there. This is obviously a heavy bicycle and pedestrian traffic area, so we want to make sure that everybody is safe. And so we're waiting to hear back from them. So any help that we can get in that would be much appreciated. And then lastly, just echoing what has been said before, obviously the attacks in Georgia were horrendous. As someone who's Asian American myself, I remember being 10 years old when 9/11 happened and all of the anti-brown discrimination that we saw at the time. So to see this now during a pandemic, which is a similarly traumatic event globally, is just horrendous. And so CB6, along with everybody on this meeting, obviously stands against this. But the nuance to this as well is that the attacker thought that these were sex workers, which they may or may not have been. And so one of the conversations that we have been having at the Business Affairs Committee on our board has been about decriminalization of sex work and making sure that sex workers are protected, because this is not an isolated incident in terms of violence against sex workers. And so we'll be continuing those conversations at our Business Affairs Committee as well as Public Safety. And so any collaboration with that, I would be more than happy to do so. So that's all we have at CB6.
Thank you. Stephen Brown, CB7.
Thank you, Rosie. I'll walk through some of our committee work and things that we're focused on. Our Youth Education and Libraries Committee, particular in education, has been quite busy We've had several meetings on a broad range of topics from mental health challenges, continued talking about the school openings, and budgets are very, very concerning. We had, again, a great committee meeting and brought in some mental health experts, and we're both very sad to hear the status of some of the challenges that were happening in the schools, but also very optimistic that with the whole impending school openings, that this would sort of be alleviated, because we do think, or we did learn, that there are lots of ties between those. We were happy to hear about the middle schools openings, happy to hear about the high school openings, and also extremely excited to hear about sports, and want to thank Madam Borough President for flagging that as an issue within our school system. A little more in sports is that we were happy to see that the Parks was giving out permits, and we're excited to know that our West Side Little League, which is a big staple of our community, will be opening up in April. Having young people walk around in colored shirts is always a festive experience here on the Upper West Side. So we're excited to see that in April, and hopefully show how our community is coming back. Lastly, continue to have budget issues on education. Extremely excited to hear Senator Schumer talk about education getting into the city, and continue to flag the clawback issues that I think are going to happen. It was nice to hear that I believe that 25% has been already given back, but we're hoping to get 100% because that has an extreme impact on our schools. I wanted to note something around our parks and environment. We attended an environmental justice presentation by the city. We were very, very moved and found it important. We think it's an incredible way to address equity in our community. I would encourage other community boards to take a step back and look at it, because my understanding is there was only either us or a few of us in Manhattan. But we're very moved by this, so we're going to put together a working group to address this. And we have several areas, particularly in our Manhattan Valley, that are addressed by environmental justice, and we think it's extremely important. Just some land use topics. We continue to work, and we'll be coming out with a resolution regarding the citywide comprehensive planning. And we wanted to flag our disappointment for the ruling on 200 Amsterdam. And once again, thank the Madam Borough President for very quickly putting together a letter that we signed as well. Lastly, I'll talk about Health and Human Services. We continue to do some wonderful work there. I did want to flag that last month we shared 2 resolutions around food insecurities and hate crimes. We're hoping to elevate that to a borough president conversation, and we're going to work with April Adams over the next month to hopefully communicate that around the board. And then lastly, NYCHA continues to be a group that we're advocating for in many of the challenges that they have. And that's our report.
Thank you. Russell Squire, Community Board 8.
Thank you. So first of all, I want to say thank you, Gail, and thank you to your staff for having Senator Schumer present to us this morning. It was very informative and also very encouraging. I mean, each aspect of the bill was better than the last. I think it's been a long time since, certainly since I can remember hearing about something coming out of, the Senate that was just, pure unalloyed good news, essentially. So that's very encouraging. Community Board 8 has had a busy month. We had our meeting last night, our full board meeting. So we passed a number of resolutions, and I'll tell you about some of them. We passed a resolution in opposition to a proposal in the governor's budget to allow for automatic conversions of hotels and office space to residential housing. And this is an issue that we had discussed at the last Borough Board meeting and some of the updates then. And so now we have actually formally passed a resolution in opposition to that bill, which would override local zoning and had a lot of loopholes in it that really weren't going to result in, or that we don't think are going to result in actual affordability, which is a big priority for us. We passed a resolution to address issues around trash in the streets, which is a big problem that we've had in our district. And we've seen a lot of trash cans being opened. And, I think some of that stems from the reduced trash pickup, and some of that stems from other issues that we've had with people opening them. And so we did pass a resolution to try and address that, including calling for increased trash pickup. we we passed a resolution requesting Art on the Avenue to come to our district. And we've also got a working group led by our new arts committee, trying to work with local artists to get their art on display in the community. Update on Roosevelt Island and the Kohler Task Force, our Kohler Task Force that we are working on in conjunction with various elected officials and community groups and residents there, including your office, Gail. We are continuing to work to help the residents of Kohler, and there was a great vigil there over the weekend to memorialize the many people who sadly lost their lives during COVID, who have been Kohler residents. And I want to say thank you for attending, and Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney attended, and many people from the community came out to show solidarity with the residents there, and it was a very successful event. And so we're continuing to work hard to try and help the residents there. And then the last thing is on the planning together comprehensive city plan proposal. We have been taking a look at it. We had a land use meeting last week where we had a presentation from the city council on the bill, and we are going to have another presentation at our next land use meeting from a city planner to talk to us some more about it and present some other views of the bill. And we're also going to have a task force that will be looking at it and will really be digging into the actual legislative text and sort of going line by line and essentially working on suggestions for improvements to the bill and specific feedback that we can provide to the city council about it. So that's my update.
Thank you. Community Board 9, Barry Weinberg.
Thank you, Rosie. I want to thank the Borough President's Office for having Senator Schumer, and I'm sure we will be reaching out afterwards to figure out ways we can make sure that the money gets to the places and organizations and people that need it and are entitled to it. On some board-specific business, we had a tour of the construction on our new temporary offices. For those who don't know, Community Board 9 has had temporary offices since 2009. We are pleased that this is coming along. However, we found that DCAS and OMB, in their infinite wisdom, had canceled certain requests that we had made on March 2nd, 2020, that would allow the space to better serve virtual meetings and hybrid meetings. So eerily prescient meeting that we had in March 2nd, 2020, requesting certain layout changes that would not have cost anything, but that DCAS canceled when no change orders came down, even though the change orders would cost nothing. So we are fighting with DCAS to make the space better equipped for virtual and hybrid meetings. But nonetheless, hope to move into our new offices soon. We passed a letter of support for City College's Bond Center, which is seeking a federal Department of Energy grant to construct a community microgrid in our neighborhood. This would connect the power plant of at least City College, as well as the North River wastewater treatment plant, which is under Riverbank State Park, to the grid, and would allow them to feed in excess power into the community grid, lowering energy costs and increasing resiliency, particularly in the summer when the load on our local grid, which is based out of the 110th Street Con Ed substation, can get as high as 80%. So that was fascinating and interesting, and if we can get federal money, we will certainly advocate for it. We also distributed over 20,000 masks and other articles of PPE on March 6th in front of 3333 Broadway. And I would again like to thank the Borough President's Office as well as the Department of Health. There is a cluster outbreak of COVID-19 between 133rd and 135th Street, Broadway to Riverside. And so that is necessary. It is, however, completely indicative of the utter failure of our mayor and the city government to appropriately vaccinate West Harlem. 10027, 10031 were both on the mayor's 23 priority zip codes for racial equity and inclusion. 10031 did not have any vaccination site, and 10027 did not have any on the western part of the zip code. And as a result, our vaccination rates were less than half that of other zip codes in other parts of Manhattan, which had about the third the positivity rate that we did. We had a 6% positivity rate. The average in Manhattan was closer to 2. So we have raised this with the Vaccine Command Center. We have suggested sites repeatedly to them. We have been politely blown off. The health department sympathizes, but does not have the final say. And so we have been working very closely with the governor's office to do a series of pop-up vaccination sites where the state supplies the vaccine supply and allows us to go door to door to call co-op board presidents and TA presidents and block association presidents and nonprofit leaders to pre-register folks from the community who do not have either internet access or internet fluency. And so we have been able to vaccinate several hundred residents through that method, and we are very grateful to the governor and the state for, you know, meeting the need in our community when the mayor abjectly ignores it. And, you know, we are continuing to fight for a permanent vaccination site. We believe that A. Philip Randolph will close as a vaccination site when high schools reopen, and it only opened at the beginning of March when Wadley, you know, when middle schools reopened and Wadley had to move location. We are also calling a youth summit in the Manhattanville portion of our neighborhood. We are worried about, you know, the disconnect that youth have had from after school programs, remote learning, et cetera. And we are worried about, you know, violence continuing to accelerate as the weather gets warmer. We have already seen 2 shootings in the last week in that area. And so this would be kind of a meeting of all of the service providers, as well as, you know, interested youth from the area to find ways to reach out to youth and get them into free or heavily subsidized, you know, arts, sports, career, summer job activities. And we have a lot to discuss finally with the Attorney General's Charities Bureau. We have a number of sites that are of concern to us, including the former site of Child's Memorial Church, as well as a community garden space that had been owned by a nonprofit that was shuttered by the New York State Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. They operated a juvenile psychiatric facility in CB7 down in the Manhattan Valley area. But now that they are shuttered and not providing any services, we are concerned that they are liquidating their real estate and wondering where that money will go. So we are also trying to save our community garden in our neighborhood. And I think that's as much of an update from Community Ward 9 as people want to hear at this point. So thank you.
Thank you. Cecily Harris, Community Board 10.
Hello, everyone. Cecily Harris, Community Board 10. Like everyone else, I do want to thank Manhattan Borough President for having Senator Chuck Schumer on. Very good information, great information. As soon as we heard that he was coming on, I received several questions. So I do have those in my pocket and look forward to having the opportunity to raise those questions. Also, for us, we have been continuing to look at the uptick in sex trafficking in the borough as a whole, and Harlem. We had a forum, a forum, I guess it was a forum, yesterday on just sex trafficking, and it was extremely informative, but gave excellent tips on how to spot someone who is being trafficked right in your neighborhood. So we hope to have that again in a bigger way, just to get that information out, as so many people are experiencing that right now. We also are very concerned about the gifted and talented courses and classes, the program. We know that a lot has been done to change the procedure, but sometimes when you change the procedure, that still does not change the impact. We are concerned about the lack of diversity in that program. And so we did have a presentation on that. And we are looking at ways to inform our community, make sure that people know about alternative programs, and that they are, again, able to take advantage of those programs. We are excited for next month. I believe, Rosie, that we will be on the agenda for the Exonerated 5 Social Justice Initiative. I know we have been to every board around the borough. We've gotten such great support. We are excited about this initiative. We are ready to see it come to fruition. And I believe it will be on the agenda next month, where our chair of Parks, Karen Ori, will do a very brief presentation just to let you know where we are right now, any updates that may have happened over the past couple of months. And then I believe hopefully we'll be able to pass a resolution at that time. And finally, we are continuing to work with our Health and Human Services Committee to get shots in arms and to really just get information out to the community. The community we have seen a basic upturn in folks really wanting the vaccine. So we've been working with Dr. Dukes, who's the chair of our health committee, to make sure that we are involving the right entities to make sure that the information is getting out there. That is a community center. Those are churches. Those are the bulwarks of our community. So we are definitely making sure that that is happening. And if anyone has any comments or questions about how we're doing that, because I think we're doing pretty good with that, then definitely contact Dr. Dukes and our community groups. I think that is all I have. Thanks, Rosie.
Okay,
and I apologize for being late. Thanks for letting me know when to come on.
Thank you. Nelsa Arama, Community Board 11.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My apologies. I start to commute when this meeting starts, so my apologies for joining late. I'm just going to give a brief report, and then I'm going to hand it over to my vice chair to add any details. We are putting together an MTA task force as that project seems to be gaining ground. And so we are reviewing our current members in addition to any public that we feel will add value to the task force. We are also, one of the most important things that we are tackling is a moratorium on certain social service programs because of the oversaturation in East Harlem and in the upper northern part of Manhattan. So our Human Services Committee is looking at putting a moratorium on substance abuse programs until the need can be proven. And so that's something that we are looking to continue to discuss and fine tune. CB11 is concerned about all the violence against all races, but in particular, obviously you have heard the news regarding the violence against our Asian Americans. But in addition, we also have regular violence in East Harlem. We just had a shooting 2 days ago. And so that's always a concern. And as a community, we need to look into that and see how we can address that more going forward as a partnership. You know, CB11 is also concerned about vaccination sites within East Harlem because, as you know, some of us, you know, our communities have been shortchanged on vaccination sites and vaccinating our public. And so we're looking into that to see how more centers can be opened up in East Harlem to vaccinate our community. We are currently, I just want to bring this up and then I'm going to pass it over to Xavier. In terms of opening up for COVID, as you see, the governor is opening up more sites and increasing the different percentages, like for gyms and things like that. But in terms of community board, I'm concerned about community board offices that are storefronts, that don't necessarily have security, with temperature checks to go through a process before they actually get into the office. And I think that's one thing that we are going to have to look at. As for the community board offices that are storefronts that just have general staff, how we are looking to safely open up those offices, because that is a concern to me. With that, I am going to pass it over to Xavier Santiago so he can add any details or add any things that he would like to report on as well. Thank you all for your service and for listening to me this morning and your patience.
Thank you, everyone. Again, we appreciate it how all of our leadership have come together. Thank you, Gail, for being a stalwart champion and making things happen for our community and Manhattan as a whole, as well as the city. On 3/6, I attended actually with Gail and Senator Benjamin Liu and our Assemblyman Robert Rodriguez over by Protide, because we had a hate crime occur in East Harlem. And we addressed that. It's ongoing. We all shared various stories where we have been impacted by hate, whether it was physical or verbal. An assault is an assault. And when you attack one of us, you attack all of us. This extends not just beyond our borders of Manhattan, it's throughout the nation that we're having to battle this. So I implore upon everyone. Our networks spread across the US, so please, we have to stand united. And as I put it, we're one human tribe, and that's the way we have to look at it. I've been out in the field going throughout various of our NYCHA developments, going down vertically, handing out PPE. There is still a lot of concern, misinformation with the vaccine, but people are wanting information. We have a lot of homebound seniors who, when they've been passing out information about how to get vaccinated and to sign up, the people within the city agencies are not going into those buildings. So that's something we have to actually bridge and get within our networks going into the TA leadership. So that's something I'd like to call attention to everyone, because literally I went through Lexington, Carver, Lakeview, going down, knocking on doors and handing out information. They have no idea. And then some of them, they just can't leave. So that's something that I wanted to raise to our attention. We also recently, several of our members on the budget committee have attended the budget town hall with our assembly member. They're really starting to wrap their heads about the intersectionality and how funding happens from the federal government on down. Again, I cannot express the importance of where we have to advise our communities that we serve, where they need to focus their energy when it comes to budgeting and making requests. We also, again, Nilsa expressed this earlier, but we've had an extreme uptick in gun violence, and we've seen in our community a lot of out-of-state plates from down south, which is a part of that iron highway, iron pipeline. And that's where they're being pulled off when they run the serial numbers. They're coming from a lot of the gun shows that are even from Pennsylvania, Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia, and even they found serial numbers from Maine, believe it or not. So these are things to keep in mind. But we're continuing to work together. I will put my information in the chat. I've got to jump to a meeting, but thank you everyone for your service. Thank you, Gail. Please stay safe out there.
Can't hear you, Rosie. Rosie, can't hear you. Community Board 12, right?
Yes, I don't see Eliezer. I don't know if he's joined late, so I will call. Eliezer, are you available? Okay, so Gail, you should move on to the Borough President's report until Rebecca is ready to join us and give a report.
Thank you very much, everyone. I think that your reports are extraordinary. And I do want to thank the senator. We will do that very appropriately. So just a few things. First of all, just in terms of the issue of the vaccines and house to house and homebound, and pivoting to the issue of federal allocation. So what we're going to try to do, as I understand it, is continue to talk about vaccines every other meeting, Tuesday at 3 o'clock. And really, people are all welcome as they are today. The issue is homebound, just so you know. We've been pushing and pushing and pushing. Jessica Mates may be able to be more specific. Supposedly it'd be fire department, EMS, plus 2 other people going to every apartment. Others in the household could also be vaccinated, and certainly the people who are participating in the vaccine program will be vaccinated. So when it's rolling out and how it's rolling out, we're still working on, but every single discussion 3 o'clock on Tuesday has been homebound, homebound, homebound. What exactly are you doing? And we put it in writing. So I just want to say we agree, Xavier, that this is a challenge. And then just so you know, this is sort of the beginning of this federal dollars. It's a lot of money. It's a year to spend it. Please join us and we will take either Community Board 10 questions or any questions in the chat and many others. I can give you a whole lot of questions. Having spent some time in Washington in the Dinkins administration, I know that this is no joke in terms of making sure that the money comes in. So we want to focus on that topic. Just in terms of local issues, I want to thank the Triangle Shirtwaist individuals. It's a topic that I care deeply about. As you know, they have a memorial in Community Board 2 on one of the NYU buildings where so many women jumped out and died. On Thursday, March 25th is their 110th anniversary. It really started the union movement in the city, and it's going to be at 6 o'clock. You can register on our website. But there was a stoppage in terms of getting the memorial sculpture actually attached to the building without getting into all the details. Much thanks to Vanessa in our office, the state has now unleashed its 1.5 million for the monument, which will commemorate the fire which took place in 1911 and 146 people died. So congratulations on the memorial, folks, and Vanessa. I continue to be focused on the Department of Environmental Protection sewage testing data. As you know, I learned about this. We got the fact that they needed a lab, they needed 3 staff members, they needed equipment. We pushed really hard, and that pilot sewage testing has been happening, and I think it is helping in terms of where are the hotspots. Unfortunately, of COVID, they can also test for new variants, but we want to get that data up on the portal. So just so you know, we're pushing for that. There's always something that needs to get done, as you know. I want to thank the land use staff, just so you know, because you need to know numbers and I care about them. We've done 171 ULIP opinions since I became borough president in 2014, which is more than any other borough and perhaps combined. And right now, as we speak with your assistance, we have 18 ULIPs in the pipeline, which is a lot. And again, I want to thank the staff. Helicopter task force, to the credit of Congress members Nadler, Maloney, and Velasquez, we had a press conference. They are trying to pass a bill in Congress, which would state, again, I'm being really simple about it, that all of helicopter tours that are non-essential cannot fly over any city of 8 million people or more. So I know where that city is. It's ours. Now, whether that will pass or not, I don't know. They're going to try to attach it to the infrastructure bill. It's hard because if you don't throw in LA and Chicago and so on, then not many people pay attention to it. But that's one strategy that they're trying. What we're trying to do is 2 things. One, I want to thank NYC and Company because they did have a tourism helicopter contract with 3 New Jersey companies, and they have gotten rid of those 3 contracts. Thank you, April Adams, for making that happen. And no longer NYC and Company's getaway program, gone, thank goodness. Second, we have been working with amazing elected officials in the state of New Jersey, mayors, council members. Congressman Nadler's been working with his counterpart, and we have a meeting with many of them coming up in the month to talk about how we can work together, because I don't know what's going to happen on the federal level. And these helicopters, as you know, are coming from New Jersey and flying over Manhattan just to take photographs. In terms of the Lasker rink and the issue of Woolman, I want to thank all the community boards around the park. But right now, as you know, the contract, because the mayor said we're cutting everything that the Trump organization has been running, but that involved skaters and kids and so on. So that continued. Rebecca will be with you in a minute. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'll be very quick. And that particular issue is still up. Who's going to continue at Lasker? We know it'll be Central Park Conservancy, but who is, after they renovated in 3 years, but who's going to continue at Woolman? I have been advocating for the Central Park Conservancy because I know the park, but the city did put out an RFP. So we'll see what happens on that front. The social workers in the schools, you know, I've been talking about this for a long time. I do want to thank the new Chancellor Porter, because she does understand the importance of hiring more school-based social workers, one in every borough. And I know that right now in 2020, 130 schools in Manhattan don't even have a part-time social worker, but she's very focused on it when I met with her. I think it was yesterday morning. I want to join those who feel strongly also about the comprehensive zoning plan put forth by the city council. It's a good concept, but the way in which it would roll out, I don't think is appropriate. So I did testify against it. I look forward to talking about small business. As you know, I'm hoping, but I can't guarantee, that by the time the community boards have your wonderful mom and pop owner operated small business discussion, that the Department of Finance might finally have their property owner listing vacancy out available for the public. We've been talking about this data set for a very long time, but we'll have to see how it rolls out. I know there'll be a big impact on the pandemic, on the storefronts based on this horrible pandemic, but let's hope that data is there. We have a lot of reports that we have or have published. We did the AIDS Friendly, as you know, with the Academy of Medicine, and I think it's an excellent age-friendly discussion. We're also going to be doing one on affordable housing. I love the discussion by the senator, majority leader, about money to rehab, repurpose hotels or distressed property in the borough of Manhattan. But boy, do we have to stay on that now, because here's an example. Our report talks way before any of this took place on that's what we should be doing. And now supposedly there's funding for that. We got to put the two together. Permanent affordable housing in Manhattan from these distressed properties. Second, we'll have a small business report coming out, and the one that I know you're aware of, the religious facilities land use guidebook. I was just at a church the other day and they were considering, selling. And I said, wait, hold on. Can you at least have a discussion before you find somebody who's not qualified and we end up with the messes that we've heard about. We are also, I appreciate hearing about the fact that we support sports. We do want the schools to open. The sports issue is real because so many kids go to college with a sports scholarship. No sports means no scholarship. So that's something that's incredibly important to me. And I know we've also talked about opening up some of these fitness studios, because I think they could also, at a small capacity, be an asset to those of us trying to get back into the so-called normal. I don't know what that is anymore. And then just in terms of vaccines, we did publish with City Wheels on Meals, going back to this issue of homebound, giving some ideas how to do that. I know that the training series, as you heard, for community leadership training series, our annual borough president has begun. We have an amazing list of courses. One of them is by our borough historian, Rob Snyder. It's an amazing history course. I strongly urge you to get it or listen to it afterwards. I can't tell you how fabulous it is. There's really no words to describe. And all of the information is on the newsletter and on our website. We did see, in terms of community board applications, a huge surge of them coming in. We've been doing, thanks to the staff, amazing interviews, and we will work with you to figure out who gets appointed. I always hate those who do not get appointed because we just do not have enough space. So I know I will hear about it. I want to just say one other thing. I got a call from the police department at several different levels, very high up in Brooklyn, as I think you mentioned, but they are doing this. I think this week they have a couple of openings of commanding officers, and they are picking in Brooklyn, in each district where there is a vacancy, 3 candidates being picked by the CO of the police department. Then they're by the PD CO, meaning Mr. Shea. Then the names are given to the community in the following manner. This is going to happen in Manhattan. The minute there's a vacancy, we're going to have to deal with this, and I hope it works. Number 1, the persons on the selection committee are community board, the local precinct council, a member of the clergy, which I have to pick, a member of the business community that I have to pick. So be thinking yourself, who should be these persons? It's very difficult because there are lots of clergy and lots of business people. And then of course, every 2 years or every 3 years, we got to go through this. So just so you know, that's coming out of the mayor's suggestion. We can talk more about his April 1st recommendations. So, so I look forward to seeing you on Tuesday at 3 o'clock if you want to talk more about the federal money that is coming to New York and how we can focus on it going to the people who need it the most. I want to just mention too about the vaccines to go by. I want to thank Walgreens. They came to our vaccine task force last week and they were fabulous. It's not easy. They're rolling out. They were transparent and honest about the pluses and minuses of such a fast rollout. What, you know, what phones get answered, what phones don't get answered, how they're trying to improve the technology. They could not have been more open about this discussion. I do want to just talk about the anti-Asian violence. In conclusion, Chinatown, as you heard earlier from Carter, has been hit really hard. I think perhaps harder than any other borough in Manhattan. No tourists, no court workers, no workers, and of course now hitting the issue with the anti-violence. It's really rough. So thank you for bringing that up, Carter. And now we are going to hear from Rebecca Kagan. Sternell, I want to thank you, Rebecca. I think you know that I appreciate as a member of the National League of Cities Board, that you are always willing to listen to what I should be talking about at the National League of Cities. And I think it would be great if you don't mind, you've got on here members of the City Council, chairs of the Community Board. We had Senator Schumer who went through everything, but didn't have time for questions. So you may get a few, but I so appreciate giving us a little update on what's going on in Washington vis-a-vis New York. Thank you so much for coming.
No problem. So I was lucky enough to be on while the senator was speaking. So I did hear a little bit of what he ran through. And so I'm happy to sort of retread some of that if useful. If not, I can also chime in on a few areas where I think he didn't necessarily get to, but I think are particularly exciting for New York.
Go right ahead.
So certainly the FEMA piece. There's a huge amount of money that came in for FEMA, and I don't know if I didn't hear him mention, but you know, getting 100% reimbursement for FEMA expenses, where normally the city would be required to pay 25% of the cost, we now get 100% federal coverage, has enabled us to sort of balance budgets better, and took about $1 billion off the city's tab, which was phenomenal. But within that, they continue to pour more money in to the FEMA bucket, or the Disaster Relief Fund as it's called, which is the same fund that, you know, pays for emergency work after Hurricane Sandy, or anytime there's a tropical storm, a tornado. That's where that money comes from. But what changed a few years ago was a requirement that FEMA also have this program called BRIC. And I'm blanking on the exact what the acronym stands for, but long and short of it is it helps fund large scale resiliency projects. And the city has a number of applications in, and the more money that's in that DRF, the more money they can then allocate to the BRIC program. And so ensuring that we can actually cover our pandemic costs and have the resources there we need to cover those in full, and then also be thinking forward in terms of planning and resiliency, culturally, socially, on a community level, beyond just sort of the shorelines that we think of. There's great opportunities there as well. And so it's not necessarily money in hand for us, because we will need to apply for that, but I do think it's an exciting area of opportunity. I know Commissioner Criswell is excited about that. And certainly when she goes to head FEMA, that'll be immense for the city. But that's just one other area. I did want to point out that I think we're particularly excited for someone who lived through Sandy with the city and has seen sort of how we define resiliency continue to change as we understand that needs are beyond just sort of gray infrastructure and even green infrastructure, but at the community level, and that resiliency is what can actually sustain us. So that is an exciting thing there that I think needs to be called out here. I think the senator talked about, you know, trying to make sure resources got to us and counties and communities throughout the state, and not with the governor. That is a big thing we're excited about. Certainly education money, just given the needs so many kids have, given the need to just get equipment, the need to get broadband out there, and then the ability to use the state and local dollars for some infrastructure, including water infrastructure and broadband. Those are two key issues I think everybody in the city can agree are always areas that may not always sound like the sexiest ones. It's certainly the water infrastructure one, but are just incredibly important to keeping the city functioning. So excited for the opportunities that are present there. And so I can stop there, and then I can go on to everything else going on in DC if those are interested. But if there are specific questions, I'm happy to field them as best as possible on the stimulus piece.
I so appreciate Cicely, Board 10, did you have some that you wanted to address? I know you had said you did.
Yes, one of the questions that I received was on the debt collection provision, and the
For student loan debt?
Can you hear me?
So it's hard, Cicely. With Rebecca, want to know, is it student loan debt or some other? What kind of debt provisions?
So the provision that allows private, like debt collectors to garnish someone's bank account.
Okay, is that something part of the stimulus, Rebecca? I don't know.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Right.
If it may, is it related to the ability to garnish specifically the $1,400 stimulus payment, Cicely?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
All right.
That's previously they had not allowed
The
those
garnish
payments to be garnished, and now this round, I believe they can be.
Yes, because of the way they passed it, or the different provision had to be put in there, since it wasn't like a bipartisan vote.
Exactly. Well, it wasn't a bipartisan vote in the Senate, but yeah, I think in order to not have, even just to get unfortunately, all 50 Democrats on board.
Well, that's something to really pay attention to, Cicely, then. Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else that's really important to pay attention to?
Did the senator go over student loan?
No, go ahead. You can do that. He didn't.
So the student loan provision is also an exciting one, I think, for sort of its precedential nature, but any student loan forgiven between now and the end of federal fiscal 2025 will be a tax-free event. So normally if you have a student loan that's forgiven, you have to pay taxes on the amount that's forgiven because it's as if it's income to you. Under the stimulus between now and the end of the timeframe I just laid out, it will not be a taxable event. And so for those that are like in public service loan forgiveness programs or any of the other types of loan forgiveness programs, there's a huge number of student loans, state programs, federal programs, local programs, anybody in one of those programs. And if they have their loan forgiven in the time frame, that is a non-taxable event, which is great. And it also has added additional wind to the movement of getting Biden to cancel a portion of student debt for student borrowers. So that would mean that if Biden canceled, $10,000 of student debt for everybody, that would not be taxable to anybody. So it's a really sort of exciting opportunity in terms of sort of not making people who committed to do public service and good work, making sure that they can have that forgiven and aren't facing additional consequences in terms of a large tax liability.
Okay.
I saw a question I think popped up in the chat here.
Go ahead.
Student loans acquired. It's not a question of when you acquired the loan. It's a question of when it's forgiven.
Okay. All right. Keep going. What scares me about all of this is we can't even get vaccine information out, Cicely. So how in the world are we going to tell everybody about all of this? We can't even get vaccine out. I'm just saying. Can't figure out how to vaccinate people at home.
I hear you, and I can tell you.
That's why we're going to do, Rebecca, every Tuesday at 3 o'clock, at least in Manhattan, have a discussion, because I have no idea how in the world we're going to, make sure that people know this. This is very exciting, but we're a big city, so I get nervous.
Certainly, and toggling a little, I was on the phone with the White House last night talking directly about vaccine, and it's something you've heard the mayor talk about sort of endlessly about wanting a direct allocation of vaccines so we can deploy it directly within the city. We have the ability to do it somewhat with the governor's superpowers. That is sort of vastly circumscribed, but there is going to be sort of a groundswell of mayors, and I think you will see not only from our mayor, but from others around the country. I know there's a letter getting generated now from cities all over just saying, give us the damn vaccine. Give it to us. Let us push it out through our community networks. It doesn't need to be this state level thing that doesn't necessarily get where we need it to go, right? Because it becomes a ridiculous game of telephone. So we were pushing again last night on the phone with the White House in terms of what is actually helpful, how they can do that, with the federally qualified health centers. Tell us exactly how many doses they're getting so we can then run that communication campaign, right? Tell us who's getting them, tell us how much they're going to get so we can then be, the megaphone for all these good efforts. So I hear you loud and clear, Gail, that there's a huge amount of information we want to get out there and get to people. And, God willing, we'll have more vaccines soon and it will eliminate the need for some of this stuff. But it's a challenge across the board, and know that we are constantly hammering and constantly on the phone, demanding more, better access. Fair share is a huge thing we've been pushing for. Excuse me, like New York City, Washington, D.C., where I live, and Chicago, Philadelphia are vaccinating huge numbers of individuals that aren't residents of their city. Yeah. In part because they're workforce hubs, right? You have people commuting in DC from Virginia and Maryland. Yeah. And so the DC allocation of vaccine is just sort of eaten up by those that aren't actually DC residents. And it's true in the Philadelphia area, certainly with all the medical centers there and people coming in to work at those. Obviously in New York, and even with our own city workforce, a number of individuals live out in Nassau, Suffolk, Westchester. Those aren't New York City residents. And we're happy to vaccinate those people without a doubt, and certainly as their first responders and teachers and what have you. But us big cities do need more vaccine, and that is something else we're pushing for continuously, that where you have sort of a large regional workforce, that those cities that are getting allocations, that needs to factor into the federal government's thinking about distribution.
We know that Board 9, Barry needs a site, just so you know, I'm on it, just so you know. We still need our direct allocation. Okay, so are there other questions? You can just start talking, because
okay. People should feel free to just interrupt me.
No, I'll start. Is there any other question that's coming up? I can say.
Yeah, I had a quick question.
Go ahead, Carter. Yep.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could tell us how much money will flow directly to the New York City public schools, excluding the money for complying with the CDC guidelines.
That number is not known, in part because much of it goes through the state. And so the last round, like under CARES, I believe it was $400 million. And then it got up to almost $700 or $800 million that the state did not pass through to us, that was supplanted. So I know in the one House bills that just came out, there was an effort to roll that back. I don't know what is happening now with the newest allocation. I have heard reports from state colleagues that the formula is somewhat less favorable to us than it was before. We have been trying to run that down because we haven't seen that number yet. So that is something we're looking at, but trying to get you a perfect number is hard, in part because it involves the second floor.
Okay. Barry, go ahead. Go ahead about the rental assistance, which
yeah, I was just going to ask Rebecca. Senator Schumer indicated that the rental assistance that is in the bill will not go through the state, or in New York State in 2.5 billion, but because of the issues in distributing the last round of rental assistance, that there would be a different process. Do you have any insight into or knowledge of what that process will be?
I don't know, and I'm being slightly cagey here, in part because last time the rental assistance came directly to us as well, but there was pressure from the state to have it all go to them, a demand of us to relinquish, so that they could then administer the program. And those of us around the state said no. So I don't doubt, the rental allocation again will be for, same thing. I don't know how that's going to work. I know there is a concerted effort on the part of, our Department of Social Services, HRA, HPD, is in conversations with the state to harmonize programs, right? To make sure that we can best get money to people, because that's the whole point of this. Like, how quickly can we get money to people to help them with rent? Full stop. So we are working in, I'll say together, I don't know that it's quite coordination, but the money did come to us directly last time, and it will come to us again. How we then do that to make sure it's the most effective program. I will admit I don't have the latest details as of sort of like the last 2 weeks on that. We have been directed towards stimulus and infrastructure, but yes, the money did come to us. The money should come to us again. However, New York State political dynamics.
Okay, that's helpful because they do have DHCR. So go ahead. Somebody else? Anybody?
Other questions?
I have a quick question, which is that the folks who are concerned about workforce, my understanding is we could end up, again, this is money, where's it going to come from? 300,000 to 400,000 New Yorkers are out of jobs, approximately, New York City. And the question is, their skills may not match the jobs of the future, whether it is infrastructure, e-commerce, Paris, etc. So there's a push from some economists whom I've been speaking to take money from the sky, I'm not sure exactly, to train them. I mean, literally, that is how to keep the businesses afloat that are on life support. That's one. So how is that being discussed? Number one. Number two, unemployment, fabulous, extension, federal, state, I understand it. But is there some way of turning some of that into a wage subsidy? Again, these are other ideas. Wage subsidy, so that as you are getting your unemployment, you have a job and 75% of your salary is paid for by this, unemployment. And then the balance is paid for by the employer. So the issue is, how do you get 400,000 New Yorkers back to work? And that's an idea. I didn't know if something like that has come up, or if that's something that we should be working on, et cetera.
I think it's certainly something everybody should be working on. There's a call for a healthcare core, CORP core, or PRPS, core, in the bill to help, get a whole generation of public health workforce. And those who could respond to a pandemic. It's something Senator Gillibrand actually championed. It's something we thought would be great as well, just given the pandemic, having, folks ready to deploy. And also getting people, trained in the healthcare space is a way to do that. So there's that in the bill. There's also things that, the mayor laid out in the city, like the CCC with sanitation. So there's other sort of employment-oriented programs that I know are being considered and looked at, and certainly with the resources coming in, how best we can deploy them.
Okay.
One of the other things, and I won't speak for OMB or budget, but I know there have been continued conversations based on the pledges of how we can help sustain and sort of get people back to work. Obviously, as we can reopen, a little more people can go to jobs. That will help somewhat. It will not be perfect, of course, nor will it sort of make up for all that was lost. But that is certainly a factor that weighs in too. One of the other things that we are looking at now in Washington is the sort of annual federal funding appropriations process. And for the first time since 2010, they're now going to be doing earmarks. And within some of those earmarks, there's within that sort of universe, our members of Congress are accepting proposals. And so one of the things that we have looked at, and some things that have come up in conversations, are different programs to train kids in different fields or academic areas, and oriented towards a different type of workforce, towards a digital workforce, towards an online entertainment one.
Right.
And so those are some of the things we're talking about with the federal delegation as well, to help get people skills for sort of the new economy.
Okay. I mean, this is a big number. 400,000 is a big number.
Completely.
And so everything, I mean, they're not just young people, because we do
Right.
have a very big non-college graduate workforce, and they're going to need some help. So young people are important, but adults are also.
Right. I think it needs to be across the board, where you've got people just out of high school.
Yep.
There are young people that don't necessarily have the skills they need, but those people are ready to jump into a new field. And so this is like, we're trying to look across the board, and certainly with the Health Service Corps, and then other proposals that the mayor had put forth. Those are all things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then certainly Maria Luna had a question. The process of renewing green cards and passports now. Why wait more for a year for this? Is that something that you know about? I don't know.
Is this having to do with the slowdown at USCIS?
It must be. Yeah, probably.
Some of that is USCIS relies a lot on fees. They have had a cash crunch. The Biden administration has rolled back some of the proposed fee changes that they were going to do for forms. Passports are handled through State Department. Some of this just has to do with the Trump administration just gumming things up and not having staff and personnel in place. I believe all those federal agencies have resources now for this. I don't know that it's maybe never enough, but those types of services should go faster now. But there are still huge backlogs at USCIS for all types of immigration status processing, whether that's green cards, whether that's getting documentation as LPR, some stripe, TPS. All these things are taking longer, and we've heard that across the board.
Great. Okay. I don't, any other questions? I don't want to keep Rebecca too long, but if you have other questions, let us know. Anybody else? Looks pretty good, Rebecca. You covered it, I think.
I'll give
Oh,
one,
Rebecca, there were some questions in the
chat.
to Schumer, yes, in the Q&A when Schumer
Yeah.
was here. Maybe you can answer some of them.
Do you have it? I've been on 3 Zooms since he spoke.
Yes, I'll read them to you. One is that Schumer had mentioned all of these relief items were only available until September, and the person wanted to know why.
That has to do with budget reconciliation and federal fiscal years. So the federal fiscal year runs October 1 to September 30th. And so for a number of these things, they are just to the end of the fiscal year, at which point they can sort of be reevaluated and repassed with the with like annual appropriations. Some of it has to do with looking at the 10-year budget window under the very wonky reconciliation process, which is how this legislation was passed. We could spend an hour talking about that process alone, so I won't bore people with it. But that is a factor that goes in. And so that's part of the reason that there's things are sort of time bound here. There's also the fact of the disaster declaration and the emergency declaration that keeps being extended by Biden. And so the September 30th is sort of like a natural federal endpoint for a lot of things. And so they often peg things to that endpoint because it's a good checkpoint for reevaluation of whatever is happening at the moment.
We have someone who's on the board of the New York City Fire Museum and wanted to know who to approach about funding from the ARP.
What kind of funding?
I'm not quite sure what the senator was talking about that she's referenced that.
Mentioned that there was funding for museums included.
Oh, for culturals, yes. So there's some fund for NEA and NEH. And then there's PPP that's available for them. I would go to the senator's office on that. They would be the best people to help navigate that and ensure people can get funding. I'm sure you guys have contacts there. If not, I can share a name too.
This
That's how
other
we got him to
question.
come, Rebecca. We got him to come.
What was that?
That's how we got him to come, you know.
Well, yeah.
Go ahead, Rosie.
Okay, and this is some information and then the question, so I'll just read it all out. As you turn to infrastructure, the president reiterated the other day that earners making less than or more than 400,000 should expect tax increases. But what about those 1% who don't earn money via W-2s or carry interest, real estate developers? Is Congress going to finally make these Americans pay their fair share? Also, will SALT deduction be reinstituted and limit on mortgage deduction be raised? These items disproportionately impact New Yorkers.
Okay, I'll take all 3 of those. On SALT, God, I hope and I wish, but I doubt it because that costs about $1 trillion itself that was used to pay for the corporate cuts. SALT not likely now. The proposals I have heard are limiting SALT deduction for those earning, up to like $1 million a year, right? So there's only, you sort of limit, or 500, those who make 500,000 a year, anything over that's not eligible for SALT. So those are some of the proposals of capping it, not at the dollar amount of deduction, but actually capping it based on your ability to pay. But that is not anywhere yet. I don't think that's gonna happen. Mortgage interest, I don't know that will change back either. I think right now the focus is on renters, and I think the focus has been on stabilizing the housing market writ large so we don't relive 2008, 2009. So I haven't heard that deduction, certainly not in the context of infrastructure. On infrastructure, Biden made the statement about, yes, wanting to raise income. Rebecca and the city of New York and everybody, yeah, those people should absolutely pay more. And honestly, the corporate tax rate should go up, and we should really just be taxing, capital gains more than anything. Right now, though, there is no bill in front of Congress at the moment to fund infrastructure. Biden said that. They know they need to pay for the infrastructure bill. They can't sort of just run up the deficit on it. And there's a number of different funding mechanisms they can use and actually roll back some of the Trump tax cuts on that. Even just raising the corporate rate 2 or 3% can yield a huge amount of money that can go into infrastructure projects. So those things are being looked at. Actually, next week, I believe, starting next week, various House committees are actually going to be hearing from members about their various proposals. The Transportation Infrastructure Committee in the House wants to hear proposals, and the Ways and Means Committee for exactly this reason, to talk through tax proposals. So, the city itself has ideas on advanced refunding of bonds, Build America bonds, all sorts of financing mechanisms and tax things that could unlock all sorts of money to help with our deep capital needs, and to do infrastructure as we conceive of it, which is not just sort of bridges and roads and ferries and coastlines, but which includes housing, which includes school construction, which includes resiliency. So that's going to require a mighty sum of money. And so we are sort of supporting any and all efforts to raise revenue, especially from those who can most afford it, to help make sure that, we keep our infrastructure in a state of good repair.
Great answer, Rebecca. Thank you. Anything else, Rosie? Because I don't want to keep her too long. We did promise 10:30.
I see Barry and Tammy had their hands up.
All right.
Okay,
Go ahead.
for it. I'll do these two.
Sorry, my question been answered already.
Tammy, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Resiliency was going to be my next question in terms of funding for that, Rebecca. So I completely appreciate where you're going on that. It's very important to Community Board 1, being the low-lying historic district that we are. Secondarily, we did send a letter to Senator Schumer about the funding for the arts and the museums, specifically targeting support in our historic district, which, again, without funding, resiliency and everything else is an issue. So I would hope potentially if you can help us get a meeting with Senator Schumer about the arts institutions that we sent.
No, we can work. Rebecca doesn't have to do that. Tammy, we can work on that.
But Gail, a friendly amendment though, that as we are talking about earmarks and things in Congress, letting the senator know that that's something that you need funded or would want funded, or letting them, I believe where you guys are with the Seaport, that is Nydia?
Yes, Nydia it is, or Carolyn Maloney, I'm not sure.
I know, depending on where you draw, and then a little bit of Jerry. But
Jerry.
reaching out to, it is Jerry, right where that hits there? Where it curves, right? Trying to do my mental member districts. Reaching out to his office saying, look, we know there's federal money, there might be earmarks, we'd love something here. A big thing that the federal electeds need is community support. And so, in our conversations, we push for all our culturals because that's great for the city's, economy. That if we have our robust cultural nightlife back, or cultural institutions, that's what we need, and that helps us. And so, along with public housing and everything else, we have been trying to carry the water a little bit for everybody. And so certainly your advocacy and outreach will certainly go a long way.
I heard the word earmark. I listened very carefully.
Oh, it's a new day here.
Ooh.
All right, I have time for one more if somebody's
I
got
think that
one.
might be it. Rosie, do you have anything else?
Okay.
That might be it.
I don't see any more hands, so thank you so much, Rebecca.
Lovely to be with you all.
I can't thank you enough. It was incredibly informative, and we will keep in touch. Thank you.
Great, sounds good, everyone. Take care.
Okay. Thank you, Rosie. We're done as far as I know.
Well, Eleazar was in as an attendee. I think he's been elevated, so if he wants to give his report, and then from there we can move on for a motion to adjourn this meeting. Eleazar. See. Can someone just check and
Hello?
elevate him? Yes, there you go. Great.
I'm good. Sorry, I'm a little late. I was in a surprise party for my 5-year-old at her daycare. So even I was surprised that the teacher had a surprise party. So my apologies for being late. I'm not going to take a lot of your time. I just like to say that our Parks Committee, under the guidance and the direction of Liz Ritter, was able to help us pass a resolution in which we are resolved to change 3 sections of High Bridge Park and name it under African Americans. One is a fellow board member and 2 others members of our community. Ori Bing, my good friend Kansas Baker, and Jean Michelle Basquiat. Those are the people to whom we're honored. We try to honor, or we're honoring by renaming High Bridge Park in those 3 specific sections under their name. Last but not least is to make everyone know about the death of a good friend of ours, Edith Prentice, an extremely community resident. I'd like to highlight her life by just reading this letter. She was an extremely brilliant and fierce advocate, a friend of different levels, elderly, community members. She passed away on Sunday, and we will miss her strength, courage, and adversity, and passion for advocacy. So I'm gonna dedicate my report today to Edith Prentice. So with that, I finish my report.
Thank you very much. I will say that I'm in touch with the New York Times. I'm trying very hard. I'm in touch with her brother because I actually knew about it, as you did soon after she passed. And I'm trying to get a New York Times obit because she deserves it. It's not easy to do that, but I'm not giving up. So thank you very much for mentioning her. So.
Yeah, thank you, Gail. She deserves that and more. She was an extremely contributor of our community, a good defender, and everything that our community stands for. We owe a lot to Edith.
Yes, we do. Okay, Rosie.
So I think we're going to break another record. Last month we ended at 11, which was a record for us. And today it's 10:36. And so this is really outstanding. I'll just give a quick update. We have at this point, under the leadership of April Adams and Elka Moretti, interviewed, and the rest of the team at Manhattan Borough President's Office, we've interviewed about 250 people for community boards. Interviews are still ongoing. We got about 750 applications that we're all reviewing at least twice by different members of our team. And we will be in touch with chairs and DMs to talk about priorities of needs for your and skill sets for your boards. And then Bree is getting our meetings with council members. She's working on making those happen. So soon we will get those vacancies. At this point, we got about 50 vacancies, which is a little less. Usually we're at 60 or 70. And so it's just been very exciting and different to do these interviews virtually. So I don't know, April, if you want to add anything?
Nope, I think you got it. It certainly has been a very interesting process to do these virtually. I think some folks they want to keep it and some people want to go back in person. So we'll see how it goes.
And today at 12, we have a community leadership training. We had one the other day. So those are, going to be this month and next month. We'll have a series of them. And April and I have been in contact with someone about an implicit bias and microaggression training, which we're very excited about. And we hope that we can financially make that a reality for all the boards. So with that, Madam Borough President and chairs, do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
All right, thank you all very much.
I'll take a second from Carter since this is his last meeting. How's that, Tammy?
That's,
okay.
I withdraw my second.
Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Carter, you will be missed.
Yes.
Thank you.